Hi, I am Sophia. Welcome to True Payback, where story hits different. Hit subscribe. Let's dive in.
But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how my sister Dr. Rachel Sterling became so convinced I was faking fibromyalgia, while unknowingly building her medical empire on my money. I'm Maya Sterling. I'm 34 years old. I have fibromyalgia, which I was diagnosed with at 26 after 2 years of doctors telling me my pain was just stress, or all in my head. When Dr. Jennifer Walsh finally diagnosed me, she'd been treating chronic pain conditions for 15 years. She looked me in the eye and said, "This is real. Your pain is real. And I'm going to help you manage it." My sister Rachel is 2 years older. She became a doctor specifically to prove that real medicine could fix anything, including me. She never accepted my diagnosis. Not when I was 26. Not when I was 30. Not ever. "You just need to exercise more," she'd say at family dinners. "Push through it. That's what strong people do." What Rachel didn't know, what nobody in my family knew, was that at 29 I'd invested in a small biotech startup working on chronic pain solutions. The company, Neuropath Therapeutics, developed a groundbreaking treatment protocol. When they went public 3 years later, my initial $200,000 investment became worth $47 million. I didn't tell anyone. I'd watched my family my entire life. My father valued productive members of society. My mother praised Rachel constantly for being a real doctor, while asking me when I'd stop playing sick and get a real job. I worked remotely as a medical research analyst, making decent money, managing my condition. But to them, if you weren't visibly grinding yourself into dust, you weren't really working. So I stayed quiet. I lived in my modest apartment. I drove my 7-year-old Honda. I wore clothes from Target. And I watched very carefully. When Rachel opened Sterling Medical Group 5 years ago, she'd been incredibly stressed about funding. She'd complained at every family gathering about how difficult it was to get investors, how much capital she needed, how the banks wanted too much equity. I was sitting at Mom's birthday dinner when Rachel said, "I just need someone who believes in what I'm building. Someone who understands long-term value." 2 weeks later, Sterling Medical Group received an email from Apex Investment Holdings. They were offering $2.9 million in capital investment. No equity demands. Just a 4% annual return on investment, paid quarterly. The terms were incredibly favorable, almost too good to be true. Rachel called Mom immediately. "Someone believes in me. A real investment firm." She never asked who Apex Investment Holdings was. She never researched the company. She just took the money and built her dream practice. Apex Investment Holdings was mine. I'd created it specifically to fund businesses I wanted to support, and to protect my assets. The legal structure was airtight. The investment was legitimate. And Rachel's practice was genuinely a good medical facility. She was an excellent doctor even if she was a terrible sister. For 4 years I watched Sterling Medical Group grow. Rachel hired 12 physicians. She opened a second location. She started specializing in sports medicine and orthopedics. Her practice became known for getting people back to their real lives, a philosophy I found darkly ironic. The quarterly returns came like clockwork. 4% annually on $2.9 million meant roughly $29,000 every quarter. The payments were always on time. Rachel never questioned where this generous investor had come from. Meanwhile, at family gatherings, Rachel's contempt for my condition grew. "Maya's still tired," she'd say with air quotes. "Must be nice to work from home in your pajamas." When I had to cancel on Mom's 60th birthday because of a pain flare, Rachel sent me a text. "You're not sick. You're selfish. Grow up." When I couldn't attend her wedding because I'd been hospitalized for a severe flare-up that affected my ability to walk, she didn't visit me once. Instead, she told everyone I'd chosen not to come because I couldn't handle her being happy. Dad started calling me the family disappointment at dinners. Mom would sigh heavily whenever I mentioned my condition. "Rachel works 12-hour days at the hospital and she's never tired." My younger brother Mark joined in. "Maybe if you actually tried exercising instead of making excuses." I stopped going to most family events. It hurt less than watching them celebrate Rachel while treating me like I was deliberately choosing to be in pain. But I kept making my quarterly investment returns happen. Because Sterling Medical Group was actually helping people. Rachel's patients loved her. She was genuinely skilled. And the business was profitable and growing. I wasn't hiding my success to be vindictive. I was protecting myself. I'd seen what happened when people in my family perceived weakness. They circled like sharks. I'd also seen what happened when someone had something they wanted. They felt entitled to it. So I stayed invisible. The disappointing younger sister with the fake illness and the easy remote job. Then came the anniversary party. Sterling Medical Group was celebrating 5 years of operation. Rachel had rented out the ballroom at the Riverside Hotel. She'd invited her entire staff, her investors, her colleagues from medical school, and of course the family. Mom called me 3 times to make sure I was coming. Rachel specifically wants you there, Mom said. She's trying to include you, Maya. The least you can do is show up. I almost didn't go. I'd been having a rough week pain-wise. But I took my medication, put on a nice dress, and drove to the hotel. The ballroom was beautiful. There were photos of the practice's growth over 5 years. Rachel had set up a timeline showing her journey from single physician with a dream to leading medical group in the region. I noticed she'd included a section about her investors. There was a professionally printed sign that said, "With gratitude to our financial partners who believed in our vision." Apex Investment Holdings was listed. Right at the top. I smiled slightly and found a seat in the back. The evening started well enough. Rachel gave a speech about perseverance and vision. She thanked her staff. She thanked her investors, especially Apex Investment Holdings, whose early faith gave us the foundation we needed. Dad beamed with pride. Mom was crying happy tears. Then Rachel started talking about obstacles she'd overcome. There are people who don't believe in hard work, she said, and I felt the shift in the room. People who make excuses. Who claim they can't when they really mean they won't. She was looking directly at me. My sister is here tonight, Rachel continued, and I felt everyone turn. Maya has what she calls fibromyalgia. The medical community is divided on whether it's even real. But Maya has certainly committed to the diagnosis. She's built her entire identity around being sick. People were staring. Some of Rachel's medical colleagues were nodding. I became a doctor partly because I wanted to help people who are genuinely suffering, Rachel said. But also because I wanted to prove that real illness requires real evidence. Not just feelings. Not just fatigue. Real, measurable pathology. Mom was nodding enthusiastically. Rachel gestured to her practice timeline. This is what happens when you don't make excuses. When you push through discomfort. When you refuse to be a victim. The room applauded. I sat very still, my hands folded in my lap. After the speech there was a reception. I stood near the dessert table debating whether to just leave. That's when Rachel approached me, flanked by 2 of her physician colleagues. "Hiya," she said brightly, her voice carrying. "I'm so glad you made it. I know getting dressed and driving 15 minutes must have been exhausting." Her colleagues laughed. "It's fine," I said quietly. "You know," Rachel continued, moving closer, "Dr. Patterson here specializes in sports medicine. He was just telling me about a patient who claimed she couldn't exercise because of chronic pain. Turns out she just needed discipline and a structured program. Completely cured in 6 months." Dr. Patterson nodded. "Deconditioning syndrome. Very common in people who've convinced themselves they're fragile." "Exactly," Rachel said, turning back to me. "That's what I've been trying to tell you for years. You're not disabled. You're deconditioned. You're lazy. And honestly, Maya," she lowered her voice slightly, but not enough that people couldn't hear, "you're embarrassing me in front of my colleagues." Several people were watching now. I could see Mom and Dad in the corner, Mom looking uncomfortable, Dad looking away. "Stop faking your disability for attention," Rachel said clearly. "Get your life together. Stop being the family burden." Her colleagues nodded. One of them said, "Tough love. Sometimes that's the only thing that works." Everyone was watching. I looked at my sister. At her expensive dress. At the ballroom she'd rented with money from a practice built partly on my investment. At the colleagues who believed her without question. I replied, "Understood." Then I turned and walked out. I made it to my car before my hands started shaking. Not from pain. From rage. I sat in the parking lot of the Riverside Hotel, staring at the building where my sister had just publicly humiliated me, using her medical credentials as a weapon against my real, diagnosed condition. Then I pulled out my phone. I texted my investment firm contact, David Chin. Withdraw all capital from Sterling Medical Group. Effective immediately. Full liquidation of the Apex Investment Holdings position. I want the $2.9 million principal plus all accrued interest returned within 30 business days per the contract terms. I hit send. Then I added, please ensure Dr. Rachel Sterling receives formal notification tonight. Email and phone. David responded within 90 seconds. Confirmed. Withdrawal notice being sent now. Required notice period is 30 days per your contract. Dr. Sterling will be notified within 5 minutes. I sat there engine off watching the hotel entrance. For minutes later through the ballroom windows I saw someone rush up to Rachel. She pulled out her phone. Even from the parking lot I could see her face change. Her phone started ringing. I started my car and drove home. The next morning I woke up to 17 missed calls from Rachel. 12 from Mom. 6 from Dad. 3 from Mark. I blocked all of them and made coffee. Then I called Dr. Jennifer Walsh, my rheumatologist. Dr. Walsh, it's Maya Sterling. I need to request copies of my complete medical records. Every appointment, every test result, every diagnosis code from the past 8 years. I need them certified and prepared for potential legal use. Is everything okay? Dr. Walsh asked, concerned. It's about to be, I said. The records arrived by courier 3 days later. 247 pages. 8 years of documented chronic pain. 43 separate appointments. Blood panels showing the elevated inflammation markers. Documented tender point examinations. Treatment protocols. Medication histories. Second opinions from 2 other rheumatologists confirming the diagnosis. Real evidence. Real pathology. Real illness. I had my attorney prepare a formal package. Meanwhile, Rachel's professional life was imploding. David Chin sent me updates per my request. Sterling Medical Group had 30 days to replace the $2.9 million in capital investment or face serious operational challenges. The practice's expansion plans required that capital base. The second location's lease was guaranteed against it. Several equipment purchases were financed based on their investment backing. Rachel had built her empire assuming that capital would always be there. She called me from her office number on day 4. I let it go to voicemail. Maya, I don't know what's happening, but our investor is pulling out. All of it. We need to talk about family. About supporting each other. Call me back. No apology. Just need. On day 7, Mom showed up at my apartment. I answered the door in my pajamas. It was 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. I'd been working from home as usual, analyzing medical research data for a pharmaceutical consulting firm. But to Mom, I'm sure it looked like I'd just woken up. Maya, what did you do? Mom demanded, pushing past me into my apartment. I'm working, Mom. You can't just. Rachel is losing her practice, Mom said. Her investor pulled out. $2.9 million. She has 30 days to replace it or she might have to close the second location. Fire people. You were there that night. Did you hear anything? See anything suspicious? I looked at my mother. At her perfectly styled hair. At the designer purse Rachel had bought her for Christmas. At the concern in her face. Not for me, never for me, but for my sister. No, I said simply. I didn't see anything suspicious. She's devastated, Mom continued. She worked so hard for this. And now some faceless investment company is just pulling out. It's not fair. Life isn't fair, I said, echoing what Rachel had told me countless times. Can you at least call her? Mom asked. She's your sister. She needs family right now. Did she need family when she called me lazy in front of 100 people? I asked quietly. When she said I was faking my disability. When she said I was embarrassing her. Mom looked uncomfortable. She was just trying to motivate you. Get out, I said. Maya. Get out of my apartment. Mom left shocked. On day 12, Rachel's attorney sent a letter to Apex Investment Holdings requesting more time to secure replacement funding. David Chin forwarded it to me. I instructed him to respond with one sentence. The contract terms are clear. 30 days. On day 15, Dad called from Rachel's office, putting me on speaker. Maya, it's Dad. I'm here with Rachel. We need to talk about what's happening. I'm aware of what's happening, I said. Rachel's investor is destroying her practice, Dad said. We're trying to understand why. Did that investment firm contact you? Ask you questions about Rachel? Why would they contact me? I asked. I don't know, Dad said, frustrated. But someone is sabotaging your sister's career. And I thought maybe since you were at the party. I left early, I said. Remember? After Rachel publicly said I was faking my disability and embarrassing her. Silence. She was having a stressful night. Rachel's voice came through tight. I didn't mean. Yes, you did, I said. You've meant it every time for 8 years. Every family dinner where you've mocked my condition. Every time you've put sick in air quotes. Every text telling me to grow up. You meant all of it. This isn't about that, Dad interjected. This is about your sister's livelihood. My livelihood has been questioned by this family for 8 years, I said. Nobody seemed concerned then. I hung up. On day 23, with 1 week left until the full withdrawal, Rachel showed up at my apartment at 9 p.m. She looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes. Her usually perfect appearance disheveled. Maya, please, she said when I opened the door. I need help. I leaned against the doorframe saying nothing. The investor is pulling $2.9 million, Rachel said. I have 1 week to replace it. The banks won't loan me that amount against current revenues. I'm going to lose the second location. I'm going to have to lay off 8 people. People with families. Because some anonymous investment firm decided to pull out for no reason. There's always a reason, I said. I've gone over everything, Rachel said desperately. Our returns were perfect. We never missed a payment. 4% annually, paid quarterly, always on time. For 4 years. And then suddenly they just bail. Maybe they didn't like how their investment was representing itself, I said quietly. Rachel looked at me confused. Maybe, I continued, the investor didn't appreciate their capital being used to build a practice whose founder publicly mocks disabled people. Rachel's face went pale. You know who the investor is? I am the investor, I said clearly. Apex Investment Holdings is mine. I gave you $2.9 million 4 years ago. I've been funding your dream while you've been calling me lazy. The color drained completely from Rachel's face. That's not possible, she whispered. You work from home. You're on disability. I'm not on disability, I said. I've never been on disability. I work full-time as a medical research analyst. I make $140,000 a year doing that. But that's not where the money came from. I pulled out my phone and showed her my investment portfolio screen. The one showing Neuropath Therapeutics. The one showing current value, $52.3 million. I invested $200,000 in a biotech startup when I was 29, I explained. The company developed chronic pain treatments, something I have personal interest in. When they went public, my investment grew. Substantially. Rachel was staring at the screen, her hands shaking. I created Apex Investment Holdings to manage my assets, I continued. When you needed capital for your practice, I gave it to you. Because despite everything, you're a good doctor. Your practice helps people. I believed in the work you were doing. But Rachel's voice cracked. I didn't know. You didn't know because you never asked, I said. You assumed. You assumed I was lazy. You assumed my illness was fake. You assumed I had nothing to contribute. You built your entire opinion of me on assumptions. I'm sorry, Rachel whispered. Are you? I asked. Are you sorry you said those things? Or are you sorry you said them to someone who turned out to have money? Rachel couldn't answer. I have 8 years of medical records, I said. Documented fibromyalgia. Certified by 3 separate rheumatologists. Blood tests. Treatment protocols. Everything you said doesn't exist. Dr. Jennifer Walsh has treated me for 8 years. She's been practicing for 23 years. She's board certified. But you, a doctor who's never specialized in rheumatology, decided you knew better. I was wrong, Rachel said. I was so wrong. Maya, please. The withdrawal stands, I said. You have 7 days to replace the capital. After that, Apex Investment Holdings will have no further business relationship with Sterling Medical Group. I'll lose everything, Rachel said, tears streaming down her face. No, I corrected. You'll lose the second location. You'll have to restructure. You'll have to rebuild with different capital partners. Partners who will probably want equity. Partners who will have more control over your decisions. But you won't lose everything. You'll still have your primary practice. You'll still be a doctor. You'll still have your reputation. What about our family? Rachel asked desperately. What about it? I replied. The family that calls me the disappointment? That says I'm faking my illness? That treats me like a burden. We didn't understand. You didn't want to understand, I said. There's a difference. Rachel was sobbing now. What do I have to do? I'll apologize to everyone. I'll tell them I was wrong. You should do that anyway, I said. Not because of the money. Because it's true. Because you were cruel. Because you used your medical degree as a weapon against someone with a real diagnosis. I will, Rachel promised. I'll do anything. The withdrawal still stands, I said firmly. I closed the door. The next morning, Rachel sent an email to the entire family. A real email, not a text. Subject line, I was wrong about Maya. In it she detailed everything. Her assumptions about my condition. Her public statements. Her realization that I'd been her anonymous investor for 4 years. Her acknowledgement that fibromyalgia is a real, documented condition that she, as a non-specialist, had no business dismissing. She didn't mention the money withdrawal in terms of asking them to pressure me. She just stated facts. Mom called immediately. Maya, is this true? You gave Rachel almost $3 million. Yes, I said. And you never told us you had that kind of money? No. Why not? Because I watched how this family treats people they perceive as weak, I said. And I watched how they treat people who have something they want. I didn't want to be either one. Silence. Your sister is losing her second location, Mom said quietly. I know. You could stop that. I could, I agreed. But I'm not going to. She apologized. She apologized because she found out I have money, I said. Not because she realized she'd been cruel to someone in chronic pain. There's a difference. I hung up. On day 28, with 2 days remaining, Rachel's attorney sent a final request for extension. David Chin called me personally. Maya, I have to ask. Do you want to reconsider? Sterling Medical Group is scrambling. They found a potential investor, but they need 45 days to close the deal, not 30. No extension, I said. Understood, David replied. The full amount plus interest will be returned to Apex Investment Holdings on day 30. $2,947,000. On day 30, the wire transfer completed. Rachel had found emergency funding from a medical investment group. But they'd taken 35% equity in Sterling Medical Group. Rachel was no longer the sole owner of her practice. She had partners now. Partners with opinions. Partners with control. The second location survived but scaled back. 4 positions were eliminated. Rachel's expansion plans were frozen for 2 years per the new investment terms. I took the returned $2.9 million and invested it in 3 different medical research startups working on chronic pain, autoimmune conditions, and invisible disability accommodations. 2 weeks after the withdrawal completed, I received a letter from Dr. Jennifer Walsh. Maya, I heard through colleagues about what happened with your sister's practice. I want you to know that I've been contacted by several physicians from Sterling Medical Group asking about fibromyalgia education. Your sister apparently requested comprehensive training for her entire staff on chronic pain conditions and invisible disabilities. She's implementing new patient protocols. I thought you'd want to know. I filed the letter away. 3 months later, I received an invitation to Sunday dinner at Mom's house. The note said, Rachel asked specifically that you come. No pressure. But we'd like to see you. I almost didn't go. But I did. When I arrived, the family was already there. Rachel looked different. Tired. Older. Humbled. Maya, she said quietly when I entered. Thank you for coming. I nodded. Dinner was awkward. Nobody mentioned the money. Nobody mentioned the practice. We talked about Mark's new job. About Mom's garden. About Dad's golf game. Normal things. After dinner, Rachel asked if we could talk privately. We went to Mom's back porch. I've been going to therapy, Rachel said without preamble. Processing why I was so resistant to accepting your diagnosis. Why I was so cruel. I waited. My therapist thinks it was about control, Rachel continued. I became a doctor to fix things, to have answers. Your fibromyalgia didn't have a clear fix. It made me feel helpless. So instead of accepting that, I decided you were the problem. That you just weren't trying hard enough. That's not an excuse, I said. I know, Rachel agreed. It's an explanation. Not an excuse. What I did was wrong. How I treated you was wrong. And I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not because of the money. Because I hurt you. For years. I looked at my sister. At the genuine remorse in her face. I'm implementing new protocols at the practice, Rachel said. For patients with chronic pain. With invisible disabilities. Training for all staff on medical bias. I want Sterling Medical Group to be a place where people like you feel believed. That's good, I said quietly. I can't undo 8 years, Rachel said. But I want to do better. Be better. We sat in silence for a moment. The money is gone, I said finally. I'm not reinvesting. I understand, Rachel nodded. I wouldn't either. But I'm glad you're making changes, I added. For your patients. Rachel smiled slightly. I'm trying. We didn't hug. We didn't have some tearful reconciliation. But we sat together on that porch for 20 minutes, talking about her new training protocols, about the chronic pain specialist she was consulting. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. As I drove home that night, my phone buzzed. A text from David Chin. The 3 chronic pain startups you invested in? 2 just received FDA approval for phase 2 trials. Early projections look very promising. I smiled. Rachel had lost her anonymous investor. But hundreds of chronic pain patients might gain better treatments. Sometimes the best revenge isn't personal vindication. Sometimes it's making sure the next person like you gets believed from the start. I'm Maya Sterling. I have fibromyalgia. Real. I'm not lazy. I'm not faking. And I'm worth $54.2 million. Rachel knows that now. But more importantly, she knows the first part matters more than the second. And that's the lesson that cost her $2.9 million to learn.